When we cover tree growth generally, we want to deal with a certain bunch of things to handle it and control it. So yeah, feeding, huge important thing. I find a lot of bonsai growers don't feed enough or correctly and at the right time of year. So yeah, feeding. I'm not going to get into that like crazy. Anything else? Pruning. Yeah, it always starts in. So yeah, pruning is a huge part of it. Yeah, so, okay, pruning, that's what I want to discuss and get into today. But there are a bunch of other things we can do to control tree growth. Wiring is another essential one. I'm sure some of my colleagues will get into that later on or somewhere down the line and go into that into more detail. Feeding, grafting, those are also other ways we can control things. And obviously, root work. Doing root pruning is another way. What happens below ground happens above ground, generally speaking, depending on species, etc. So yeah, pruning we generally do for a bunch of reasons. Energy distribution, so we want to create even distribution of energy throughout the tree. You don't want to have weak spindly branches at the base. You want to control your growth so that it evenly distributes over the tree and every branch is healthy and functioning properly. Then we always do it for direction, changing your direction when you get into pruning itself, whether you want a branch coming out on this side or that side, or how you want things to shoot and grow for your future design. You always want to try and think about future, where you're going to go to, what you want to try and achieve, and what you want your tree to look at. When you start out, we all sort of think maybe initial stages as beginners. As we get a bit more advanced and get into it, we start thinking 2-3 years down the line as to what your tree is going to look like. And when you get really good, like Kamura or some of those guys overseas, they're thinking 50 years down the line. What will happen and what it will look like down there. So yeah, that's another thing you sort of play with and try and think about where you want to get to and how you want the tree to develop over time. Balance is always important. Development of your tree, so balance between how your branches are structured, what the top is like. Apex has always developed faster on most trees. They're the first part that can be finished, as opposed to your lower branches will take a bit more time to get there because most trees are apically dominant. Everybody understands that. Hey, push energy up into the apex to get height and get above, which is obviously controlled by hormones. Your auxins will generally control the shooting at the top, and when we go in and prune, we stop those ones, and then we trigger the cytocannons, which then shoot branches up the sides, and lateral growth, which is what we want to try and achieve in bonsai. And then we prune for ramification. So ramification is branch denseness, twigging, to build up that image of your mature, developed adult tree, or give that image of it anyway. Yeah, so basically when it comes to pruning, I'm going to just use this as an example and show you guys how I go about things. If you're developing trees and getting them to grow and you want to encourage your base to thicken up and fatten up, you'll allow things to run and grow. Get a leader to grow really long, and obviously with growth you get fattening at the same time. Once you've reached your desired thickness of trunk or branch, they all go hand in hand, you can then remove that branch. With deciduous trees, I always tend to leave a little stub, because at the fork or the union of every twig or branch, there's always dormant buds. So when you leave that little stub, you'll get the branch then or the buds to activate, and then you can regrow. It also protects those buds. If you leave that stub, it then naturally dies back down, and you get it to trigger naturally. If you prune too close to a bud, you can wipe out the bud and kill it off. So yeah, sharp sword, always handy. I'm just going to take off something so I can show you the stuff that I definitely know I'm not going to use. That's another thing. And when I got it, it was a massive thing up here somewhere. Repotted it, got it out of the container. It's now been left in here for a season and a half or so. And I just initially did a trunk chop just to see where I was going to go to and what the rootage was like. But now I know for a fact this is very straight. There's no movement in it, and it's always going to be very straight unless I go and cut it back really, really hard and then try and develop movement out of it. I think personally, I was looking at some of the German bonsai artist, what's his name, Walter Paul, and he's got a lovely one, which is also a straight trunk, but sort of a natural, broad, open, not really a broom, but a natural style as to how the tree would grow. So that's what I'm going to try and aim for this. I'm just going to use it as an example to show you how we do things, and then when I finish, I'm going to go and whack it back really hard. Which most people and panic, but if you set your structure now from the beginning, from the get-go, You don't have to go back and redo it. From there, it's just about pushing the growth and developing where you want it to go. So you need to think about these things and be a bit brave. They always say that if you're going to prune back really hard and do major trunk chops, you should really wait for the winter or the early spring. But I know you can work on these throughout the autumn, and seems to be there now. I will just watch it, give her the proper aftercare that's required, and make sure that she's fine, and then in spring she should push up like crazy. It's been fed really well, so there shouldn't be any problems with that. And then I'll start developing things lower down that I can work with. I always tend to leave back budding and let more shoots develop on a tree than possibly I need. For numerous reasons. I find that if you leave 2 or 3 branches on Japanese maples, they tend to fuse at the same spot, and you can cheat how to thicken up a branch quicker by letting 2 buds shoot and run, and then I'll fuse along the base of that branch. You get that thickness a bit quicker than just cutting down to 1. And then I'll see over time with amount of foliage and leaves that you've got on a tree. Obviously you're thinking about energy flow, and if you leave more than maybe you need, it'll just help the tree recover and push energy back into back budding, and you get that flow of nutrients and water and sunlight up and down the trunk, and it just builds health and vigor. And then I can go back at a later stage and remove things that I don't really need now as the design develops and as the future goes. We always tend to change things. You see a lot of guys changing fronts over a couple of years and decide, no, I don't like this front anymore, this angle's better, and then they'll go and swing the tree around and change it to something else entirely. So there's always options. Time is your friend, apparently. Yeah, so I've taken this branch off. I've left a little stub there so that it will then seal naturally. Well, I'll seal it anyway. Reasons for sealing? Everybody knows, hey? Well, yeah, it does help with it. So disease, definitely. It prevents infection. Would you like a chopstick?
Yes, thanks.
You always have chopsticks. I'll walk it around before I kill someone.
You can see your throwing arms not so great.
No, it's just it's too much bonsai work. It cramps on me, you know. So yeah, I've chopped that back. I will seal it. It just helps to prevent disease. Yo,
Trevor, is sap flow an issue at this time of the year with the maple?
I've never really found any major problems at this time of year. It's spring, you've got issues.
Okay.
You can, especially if you've got active growth going, so you've got lots of flow going up and down. That's why large trunk branch removal done in spring is usually, and I'm talking things this kind of thickness. You will get a bit of bleeding coming out of Japanese maples.
Yeah.
But it depends again on the type, the variety, and what condition that is. Some of them bleed profusely. I did a Taiwanese maple, one of the big leaves the other day. It's got the white stippling on the actual stem, gets a yellow coloration to it, but it's got quite a big leaf. When I trunk chopped that, okay, it's a trunk of about that size. And then it bled quite profusely, even at the right time of year. So I just watched it sealed properly and had to do it a couple of times to make sure she was okay. Yeah, so you do get, so I would say if you're going to do large trunk chopping, wait until late winter before you start getting bud swell or bud push. Do it then, seal properly, and then you're just going to have to watch it because of the energy flow. Yeah. So yeah, you've gone ahead and sealed everything, no funguses, parasites, which also helps, and then it will just help the tree heal better and preserve those buds that are just below that cut. So it's essential. I don't do any root sealing. I don't know, some people do when they do repotting. I've never had a course for it. When you field collect, I never seal the roots. In they go and they seem and cooked off. Okay, great. So that's the first step. You've gone and chopped the branch off. You've left your little stub there. You've sealed it. It'll then over time start shooting out again from the base of that branch. You can then go and look at those shoots and see their placement. Sometimes you get 3 or 4 out of the same spot. So you're going to have a good look at that and see where you want to develop from. Right. Okay, so there's a bunch of pruning stages you can go through. When you're looking at your main trunk, etc., or your main branches, they always go hand in hand. You, as a rule, for an image, I always try and aim for about, if it's my first branch, I'm looking at about 1/3 the thickness of the trunk at the base of the branch. That's what you sort of want to aim for, because then it's in proportion to what the size of your trunk is. And then as you move up the branch, depending on what you want to achieve, you want to keep your branching or your secondary branching closer to the trunk as opposed to out on the tips. You want them to come out from about here somewhere, so you can develop that nice fine foliage pad. So then you'll start looking at number of shoots you've got. I usually go back to about 2 or 3 and then let them develop. In early spring you can do bud nipping, which is also a type of pruning. So basically you'll get 2 or 3 buds coming and emerging out or swelling, and you'll see there's one in the middle that's usually thicker or stronger than the others. Normally at early spring you can just pop that little bud off, which will then just help set the direction and the flow and push energy into the other 2 twigs, as opposed to having one in the middle starting. We had Dave the Groat out here from the US a while ago, and his favorite expression was a clean crotch is a healthy crotch. I think that was more from his military days than pertaining to bonsai, but it certainly does. You don't want to have 3 branches coming out from the same place. Take the middle one out, then you've got the 2. You get that nice division. It doesn't cause ugly swelling. You're normally a-okay from that point of view. So bud nipixing important. When we start dealing with shoots, anybody got any ideas how I would deal with something? Let's find one. Okay, something like that. So we started off in spring. This is all your new growth. If you want this area to thicken, there's a couple of ways you can go about it. If it's a main branch and it's very thin like this and you need it to thicken, I would just let it run. Get up to 7, 8, I don't know, 20 leaves on it and let it go. But you can wire at the same time. I usually do corrective wiring on stuff when it's young like this. So then you set your shape in it. You'll put more shape into it than you probably need to at the beginning. Obviously, as the branch swells and fattens up, the sharp bends become less noticeable and it thins out a bit, or matures, should we say. So you get these nice soft curves. If you want to fatten up a branch, but you don't want it to go uncontrollably fat, what I would do is I'd leave 3 or 4 leaves at the base of the branch. Let me just quickly show you. So I'd leave 3 or 4 leaves at the base of the branch, prune or defoliate the middle section and leave the tip. You get controlled growth then. It doesn't go wild on you. It does fatten up, but then you've got your buds down the base here and the energy going into this branch over here, which is really useful. So if I do it quickly, I don't want to take too much time. Now I've lost my scissors. There we go. So basically, I'm just going to cheat it a bit. So I'm just going to do defoliation a little bit on this one. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just removing the petiole, which is the leaf stalk, at about halfway, which then protects the small buds at the union over there. This piece will then die back and it'll shoot out again. You'll get 2 or 4 buds coming out of the side. So you increase your twigging growth. I'll just take that off in the meantime. So that's the tip that I want to go to, and then I'll remove from around about here all the way back down to about here. Just defoliate it. So I'll just go and take all that off. I'm not going to do the whole thing, it's too much.
Just explain the reasoning behind it again, Trevor.
Okay, so I just cut the tip off, never mind. Nobody saw that. Nobody saw that.
Just stick to one technique at a time, please.
What the hell? No, but you guys were addicts. You're going in the deep end. You just said so. Okay, yeah, so if you're developing maybe your I don't know, 4th or 5th branch a bit higher up the tree, and you don't want to have massive expansion. So you don't want to have the thing shooting and getting huge, long internodes and massive gaps in between things. And you want a controlled growth so you can monitor it and it doesn't get out of hand on you. What they say you do is you leave the tip, normally about 4 or 5 nodes, defoliate back to here and then leave your interior buds close to the base of your trunk. So by doing that, you're going to get this to lengthen and you're pushing power into your apical area of your branch. This area over here, because you've given it a bit of pruning to it and defoliation, it slows the growth slightly because it's concentrating on pushing out more buds, but you also get ramification developing there at the same time, and you're still encouraging growth into your what would be your new branching close and back to the trunk.
The technically surface area that you're talking about.
100%.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the one technique. That's quite useful. Once you've gotten to a point where you decide, right, you want to thicken up your branch and it's developing quite nicely, as it develops out and you get a bunch of leaves coming, normally early part of spring, I'll go and prune back to 2 or 3 sets of leaves if it's a developing branch. If it's a more mature branch, talking into more refined tree, I'll go and prune back to 1 set of nodes on Japanese maples. When we're talking in the apical areas and you've started to work on your foliage plants. So the shoot comes out and you go back to 2 or 3 sets. For example, if that was 2 or 3 sets, I'll just take it off over here. So you're left with something like that, and then the buds along here will then activate it again, and you start getting 4 buds out of here. As the shoot comes out again, you can let it grow to 2 or 3, cut back to 2. That's for developing branch structure, ramification improvement. A very useful tip in very early spring with Japanese maples particularly. Let me try and see if I can find one. It's a bit of a slow process, but very, very useful. I find it very therapeutic. As your buds swell right at the tip of the Japanese maple, you normally get 3. The middle one, as it starts opening and elongating in early spring on a more defined tree, peel the 2 outer ones open and pinch that little bud out right at the beginning of spring. It helps reduce your internodal length immediately at the start. It's a bit of a time-consuming process when you've got a tree of a decent size, and when they start shooting, every day there are more buds. So every night you're outside, yes dear, I'm making dinner now, no problem. And 2 hours later you're still busy on the tree. But it's very therapeutic, and that just gives you that short internodal space, which is what you're looking for. You don't want to have things where your nodes are, there's a prime example now. Naturally I can't find it, where you've got long node gaps. Everybody understands internodal spaces and nodes and that kind of thing, yeah. I guess so, great. So that's the one way about doing that kind of thing. Just double check that. If you're talking development, sacrificial branches, also not really used to a great deal. They are great in development if you need fattening and thickening up. The same thing, you grow a sacrificial branch to thicken up a base of a branch, then go and, again, cut it back and regrow. If you can, it's not always possible, but if you cut a sacrificial branch back, try and cut back to nodes at the base of that branch and let them develop, or just slightly above where that scar is going to be. It aids with healing of the wound too. So if you've got a bud above and one below, and you've got a cut on the side over here, because you've got sap flow moving across that surface area where the scar is, it forms callousing a lot quicker, and it tends to roll that scar nice and closed, depending on how you've cut it. Some people say, I find with large scarring, I usually go and hollow it out slightly, and then that just aids with the cambium. You don't want to hollow it out too much. If you do, then there's nothing for the cambium to roll closed onto. Some people use a cement filler if they've done that to give it a little bit of structure, and then you've got something that it can butt up against and then it'll roll closed. If you, I generally tend to use a sharp saw if I'm going to do some stuff close to the trunk and get it as flat and as smooth as possible, and then seal. I find that works really well with Japanese maples and deciduous particularly.
Trevor, the sealant that you use,
yeah.
the proper paste?
Depending on what I want to achieve. If it's big scarring, I use the paste. And I believe there's 2 varieties, the one with the green lid and the one with the white lid.
Yeah, the one's got hormones in it and the other one doesn't.
The one for the pine and the one for, so those I'll use when I'm working on my pines or large scarring on the other ones. And then the normal Kirikou or whatever the toothpaste for the minor stuff. Otherwise you're going to spend hours. And the problem with that paste is, if you don't wet it, it sticks to your fingers. And it's embarrassing when you're doing a demo and you've got to lick your fingers to try and...
You get a ready-made one that you get in the shop once or twice.
Oh, okay.
So it's that one that's got the hormones in it that's in a liquid form.
Oh, okay. Is that the blue one that I've seen in Japan?
Yeah, it's also, I'll show you the packaging.
Okay, alright.
But that's the ready-made one.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you should try that at some stage.
No, definitely.
Because I saw it and we brought it in. I haven't tested it myself, to be honest, but that's the ready-made form of it.
Okay, I will have a look at that, definitely. Alright, cool. Great, thanks.
I just want to say loads 4.
Loads 2.
Stage 4. No, right? Yes.
Well, apparently I'm supposed to get shaving Joburg for this afternoon, so
I will my beer coat great.
Yeah, I'll be outside till once inside, okay. And I've got a headlight, so if it's that bad, I did the same thing. Headlight on last night outside. Let's just have a look here. So we discussed that. Okay, someone mentioned defoliation a while ago. Does anybody know why we would want to defoliate? Yes, indeed. It's in case you get out of line, I can make you, catch flies. Mr. Miyagi-san. So yeah, defoliation, smaller leaves, definitely. So, another one?
Ramification.
Exactly. I use chopsticks as a, if I'm doing large branch bending, I use a little fulcrum, sometimes to tighten up the wire. I use it if you want to space trunks apart, as a little gauge or a wedge you can then bend from the top and keep the distance exactly the same way. I use them everywhere. And if you don't want to use them for bonsai, then Chinese is always an option. Okay, so yeah, smaller leaves, ramification, definitely. So you know you've got a bunch of types of defoliation. You can do full defoliation, partial defoliation, and leaf cutting. It generally tends to be a technique that you want to do only on healthy trees, and very healthy trees, because it's very stressful. You're basically forcing it into a winter situation, removing all their foliage, and then asking it to push energy back into creating new buds. How do we tell if a tree is healthy enough? Pop quiz. Oh, yeah. No, that sucks. No, I can't give you a chopstick for that. It's got that's just terrible.
Maybe your leaf size.
It's got 3 leaves on it.
You want a chopstick too? Chopstick? Really? Okay, fine. Yeah, okay, so color, leaf color, size of leaves, definitely. If you're going to get lots of expansive growth, you're going to get large leaves. If you've got a pale colored leaf, very small, usually a clear indication that you don't have enough energy. Hardening off of leaves is also an indication if you're dealing with pines and things like that. The right time of year that they harden off. So everybody knows what hardening off is. So they change from being very, very soft to have a much more harder, and their color changes and their sheen. And there's a whole bunch of them depending obviously on species again. But then you've gotten to a point where they are mature. And now they are functioning properly and correctly. So you don't want to go and do defoliation on stuff that's not healthy enough to handle it. You don't want to do any technique on stuff that's not healthy enough to handle it. Because it is stressful to the tree. Obviously, that's paramount. So, full defoliation, you want to develop a branch, for example, and increase the ramification or the twigging on the branch. You'll then go and do what I just did earlier. On that branch, you'll go and remove the PTL on every single leaf throughout that whole tree. That's full defoliation. So, the whole lot. But you want to look at it carefully too. And what you want to achieve, the right time of year, and you'll find that there are some branches that are weaker than others, and balance of energy is always crucial. You don't want to go and defoliate a weak branch, you're going to set it back, if not wipe it out. What you can do, you can partially defoliate it then. So partially defoliating would then go and remove only the big leaves on the outer extremities, leaving the younger, smaller, tinier ones on the interior, which then pushes energy into those, and you build ramification while you do a full defoliation on the top, bringing it back into energy management and balance, etc. Leaf pruning, also a very good technique to be done on a more mature tree. It helps to let air and light into the interior of the tree, which is what we want. We want to encourage back budding and internodal spaces closer in towards the trunk as opposed to on the extremities. So partial defoliation, you can go along and just snip the leaf off like that, which I always find looks terrible. The Japanese, obviously being the Japanese, they've got another way of doing it which is more aesthetically pleasing, and I love the Japanese people and the culture, so I tend to follow things that they do. So what they do is basically on their large leaves, that's a crappy one, sorry. Try and find a big one. Naturally now you're looking for something large, so I can show you something you can't find anything.
Tree for the leaves and you can't find them.
Yeah, no, you can't see the tree for the bush, I mean leaf. So what they do is they basically go along and they fold the leaf in half. And I can grab it. They fold it in half lengthways like this, and then when they prune it, they basically do that. And it's more attractive, but then you reduce the amount of foliage, letting your light and your air into the interior of the tree. And it can be done with almost all deciduous trees, except beeches. They don't dig it. Apparently leaf production on beeches is a problem, but we don't have very many beeches. If you find one, please let me know, and I will come and club you over the head for one. I've been looking for them for a while.
It's in the nursery.
Oh, is it?
I just want to go change the price quickly.
Yeah, unfortunately. There's one close in the botanical gardens where our club meets. It's a massive one, but it's a copper beech. So it's got that fantastic coppery purple coloration to the leaves. If I could get it out of there, I'd be happy. But alas, I don't feel like paying fines.
Trevor, it's a big job to cut each and every leaf. Can we strip it by hand? Is there a risk?
There's a risk, yeah. I would say when you do leaf cutting, you only want to do it to your larger leaves on the extremities of the branches. And leave the smaller ones, just to allow the light and energy to get into. If you're going to go and do that, I've damaged buds, I've damaged nodes, I've hurt the tree more than... Yeah. It's a time-consuming thing, and most deciduous trees are. That's why a lot of people concentrate mostly, a lot of them, onto your evergreen varieties. They develop a bit more quicker, and it's less time involved. I've got a decent maple at the moment that's probably taken me about 10 years to develop, and it's getting to show stage roundabout now. It's a Chinese maple, but it's taken me, I dug it out and its trunk's about that size, and it's about 15 meters tall, I guess. It took me the whole day to dig the thing out by myself. It was not fun, but yeah, you know, as it goes. And I've then cut it back down to about that sort of height, and then regrew the whole thing. So it's got a lovely informal upright now. The taper's right, branches are coming on. I've done grafting onto it, 2-thread grafting, to push through and create branches where I've had a bit more elongation in nodes than I like. And you develop like that. It's getting there, but deciduous trees take time to get to where you want them to be. And you need to do things at the right time of year. So you want to do early spring bud pruning. As the branches shoot out in later spring, you want to then come pull it back to 2-3 nodes. If it's healthy enough, summer defoliation, partial or leaf cutting or whatever you want. And that just pulls the process. A lot of guys overseas, I haven't done it myself, they defoliate 2-3 times a year. I've never done that. I've done it once on most of my trees, sort of middle December, and I've had regrowth and success, and I haven't gone and defoliate further than that. I don't know if you've had any success doing more than that?
Yeah, we do 23 times.
There's it, do you? Have you had success with that?
We're a lot warmer here than probably by you guys.
Indeed.
But
Yeah.
we get a lot of good results from it. A lot quicker development than what you would in the season. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm going to try it then and see how it goes. If you give proper aftercare, you shouldn't have a problem.
Fertilizing your soil mix is important.
Yeah.
And then, if you've got all those things right, then the tree just
Shouldn't be a
grows
problem.
back beautifully. Within a couple of days, then
Really?
it'll grow back. Yeah.
Oh, that's impressive. That's because mine's a bit slower than you guys, but I think it's the heat. On some of my olives and things, they take 3-4 weeks to push back after defoliation. They're slow. But it's probably my climate. I mean, it must be. I mean, it's humid in the end and it's hot there. And I only have hail netting over it. I don't have any shade netting whatsoever. I find that does a good enough job. But yeah, it must be the climate thing. You guys are a lot hotter, a lot warmer. And we didn't have a cold winter, but we had a couple of days of 0 this year, which was not bad. But yeah, frost. And I'm close to the river too, so that might be an issue. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's really the main essentials of it. As I said, you can do your bud pruning, your shoot pruning, your branch pruning. As you get into your branch pruning, it will be the same thing. Leave a couple more than what you'd like, but you want to avoid ones that are going to produce ugly swelling, and you want to think about where it's going to go to in the future, your movement, alternative branches. You don't want to have them bar branching and those kind of things because it does cause problems. And then you'll go back and remove thicker branches, long internodal spaces, so you can develop everything nice and short and get a lot of movement flowing into it. There are a lot more other things that I can go and talk about. I'm just going to put my head down and have a look at this tree, swing it around, pick a front. I know what the roots are like, they're not great. I've got a big, huge bulge on this sort of side. I don't know if you can see that. Not lekker. And then on the other side, I've got some roots there, but also not great. So I've got cuttings at home and I will graft at a later stage. The fact that you're adding more roots to your whole composition, you're pushing power and energy again, which is great. So it's a fantastic thing to get to. So yeah, I've had a good look at this, and over here on this side, this main root goes straight down into the pot. It doesn't go very far down. I chopped it back hard, so I've got a bit more structure on this side. You'll often find out when you start bonsai, you get told, no, you need the best flare, basal flare, you need the best movement you can find, and then you need some sort of interesting point or feature that you can go back to. What's Ryan Neal always stresses that point. It's some sort of interesting feature that you can bring into it. You'll have to compromise somewhere along the line. You can find a front that's probably got the best base and you're wild about it, but then when you start looking for your movement and your taper and stuff, it's on the other side of the tree. So, you've got to try and find that compromise where you find the best of both worlds. So for me, I've always envisioned this one being more of a straight sort of, not really a broom style, but a natural style, something that you'd find growing in a wide open field. You often see them in the UK like the oaks do. You got that huge dome, wide expanse. So that's what I'm going to do to this. So I'm going to start with branches that I don't want, and I know I don't want. The easiest way of doing that is to see, if you have a look at here, I had to cut this back to get it in the car. It was here this morning. And I wasn't going to go and shove it into the boot sideways. So So I know for a fact I'm not going to be using the thick stuff at the top here. I am going to hit it back hard. I'm not quite sure exactly where, but the base is quite lacquer. It's got a nice size. It's starting to pick up its mature bark. Japanese maples are obviously green, green, green when they come out, and as they mature, they go this grey, pale, white, depending on species. So I'm going to get in here and have a good look. I will keep some of the branches lower down, and I'll try and see what I can develop from here and what back buds along this trunk when I cut it back too. And then I'll regrow the apical area. But you're going to look at something more straight and open as opposed to a traditional sort of formal upright or a, I don't know what else, you know, informal upright or something like that. I don't think I get a broom out of this unless I go and chop everything back. And yeah, I don't know if I want a broom.
First take it back like 10 centimeters and start again.
Yep. Thanks. You're so kind. Jeez, you're really lovely. I think it was actually Eric said to me the other day that when you're doing trunk chops and chopping back, wherever you think you want to chop the trunk back to, go back by a third more. There you go. So if you think you want to cut it back here, go around about here somewhere and develop from there. So I'm just going to clear some of this out of the top here that I know about, and maybe I should open the floor and see if you guys have any suggestions and solutions. That's the nice part about working with people is I look at something and I see where I want to go to, and everybody else has a look at it and they go, no, you didn't, did you see that? And you turn it around and you go, son of a, really, how did I miss that? You know, really? And that's like the thing, you just bounce ideas of each other, and ultimately it's your tree. If you don't like it, what someone else has suggested, then no, they don't have to look at it every day. You do. And it's your baby. And if you want to go give it a cuddle that night, that's, you know, your own problem. So I'm just going to start taking stuff off so I can actually see what's going on. Sorry. If anybody wants some cuttings, I've had success with them in more your sort of late autumn, late winter, Japanese maples, the green ones specifically. I haven't had much success this time of year with just normal cuttings. I don't know if anybody else has. But yeah. If you want, please, fill my holla. What do you get for free these days? Nothing. Apparently love is not even free. Apparently. Come on. What? When did that happen? I didn't get the memo. Okay, I got a nice big fat branch at the base here. But it's going straight up. So I can't use that in design. If you try and wire something like this, you can, but it's tricky. I've done it with raffia before. Soaking raffia, getting nice and wet, and allowing the raffia to sit on the branch for 24 hours, then applying lots of thick wire, really slowly with the guy wire, and slowly bring it down. But you never get the angle here ready to change very much, unless you're going to do some advanced techniques and saw into it, thin it out, and then bend it open. Yeah, so you got to be a bit careful about that and watch it. They are prone to cracking, and I don't want to do a Ryan Neal or something like that. Well, yeah.
Well, what was it with Tony Tickle that was in Australia? You see that one? With a mic at the branch. So, luckily he's a good showman, so you can away with it.
Okay, so what I've done here, long interval space, buds at the base here. I know they're going to shoot from there, I'll seal it. I'm going to leave it as it is right now. I'm not going to go any further. I want something to push out from the back here. There's a big scar on the back here as well where I took off another limb. And I'm letting this run for a bit. It'll help seal that up. I'll go and clean that up with a Dremel. Open it up, clean it nicely, seal it up properly. It will grow close depending on how far back I want to go now. I'll see. Sorry, I tend to throw things. I'm a boy, I throw my toys. Doesn't change much. Let go. Also, nice thing I can get it back in the car now.
That's going to be a lot lighter.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was a bit heavy this morning. Thank heavens I didn't water last night. Another little tip and trick, if you're going to do wire work or bending branches, hold back on the water a little bit. Sap flow tends to be a bit lower, it's easier to bend. It doesn't crack and break as quickly, depending on species. But yeah, no, it certainly helps. So I personally think I can correct with root. I think I'm going to actually correct this. Let's see where we can go to. I'm going to keep these lower branches on this side. I have a problem though. This area on this side here, Japanese maples are quite prone to doing it. you can see where the sap flow has been going. It's been going up this side, it's been going up this side. This has died off for some reason, probably the lack of light. It's running up this side, but then over here, there's next to nothing until we get up into this area somewhere. So I do have sap flow, but sometimes Japanese maples channel, and they'll die off on the sort of in a central channel for no reason whatsoever that I could find. And then you have this dead part. And the problem with dead parts is you can't go and graft through it because it's not alive. You can try and thread graft or approach graft around the sides of it, but it's a bit tricky because you're on the edge of that cambium. I've had some successes and I've had some failures. They like their thread grafting. Approach grafting is a little bit more tricky to get right. It does work in practice, as they say. So I think, honestly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be brave and go for it. I think...
Go Trevor!
Hey! Tomarigato sensei! You guys are going to probably cry at me.
Nah, they're well trained, don't worry.
Good stuff.
We've got Pam here that's also come back after we chopped the tree.
Yeah. No idea.
What that tree looks like. She was here this week.
I'm going to cheat it. Yes. I've got a branch at the back here. It's not really at the back. It's more on the side. I've got something over here, but it's too high. What I think about I'm going to do is either there's a little one over here I could possibly use. It's very weak at the moment that I could then bring back into this area as your back branch. Everybody, there's so many books that you read and stuff, and they say, you know, first branch on the left or right, then you've got the second one, then you've got the back one. You don't often get it like that. It doesn't just grow like that. So it's perfectly acceptable to go and cheat things. The Japanese do it all the freaking time. So if they do it, I do it too. So this tree will have a branch on the one side, then a back branch, then a branch on the other side. And then I'll kind of mimic that as we go up the tree, shortening the spaces between the branches as we get higher, and the same thing along the branch. Shortening the spaces between the branches as we get longer and longer and longer. Yeah, so I'm going to work on the roots and correct them. I'm going to get out of the soil of the spring, but I honestly think I'm going to go back to here somewhere. Probably right where this little node is over here, somewhere. Ballpark. Any ideas, suggestions? Further back? More? Should I use the other side?
So what side are you anticipating to do?
My front will probably be around about here. I'm going to play with the angle a bit. I always do that. Get a wedge and shove it in, and then look at it from different angles, tipping it backwards and forwards. I haven't done that as of yet. And getting a good idea as to where I think the best position, and what sort of features I can encourage, or what I can show off, and then have a look at it. You know, they handle most styles, so you know you could kick it over really far, and then bring a branch on this side up. But it's very straight here, so it's going to lend itself to being more of a straight up tree. Just going to have a quick look at it.
Trevor, we're going to cut in that. The only thing I can see, I can't see properly from here, but the
Yeah.
reverse taper that you've got halfway up.
You mean here?
Yeah, you're going to fix that with, you know, your cut or...
Yeah, what I'm going to do is that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a smaller node over here. I'll probably do an angled cut in this area, and then I'm hoping that I'm going to get more bud break along this side, and then I'll encourage the lower branches. I might even grow a sacrificial one and let it shoot out to like here somewhere, because then you'll get, you know, this sort of thickness on it easy, and that'll then correct, it'll swell the base up a bit, and then, so you can correct reverse taper, it just takes a bit of time. I've got a pine as well that I got black pine that had a horrible reverse taper. Put it in the ground for 5-6 years. I pull it out every second year, root chop, flop it back in again, and I've corrected that whole taper completely. But it's, you know, it's now this as opposed to when it was a little tiny thing. Yeah, so you can do it. It just takes a bit more time, depending on how much energy and effort that you want to put into it. Yeah, so I would say that's probably my best front. The roots are not great. This bulge is a bit of a concern to me, but I'm going to go and open it up with a Dremel. I'll carve it back and remove some of that. Just shave it down in small sections, and then fill it in, and the cambium will roll closely, and I'll get that to hide up probably in about 2 years. It'll cover up completely, and then obviously when I get it out, I'll have a look at the root base properly. It has got some nice stuff on the side over here, but this side is a bit blank. So I'll see. I think there's something below here that's okay. Maybe chop it short a bit, or scar it with a scalpel, and then normally it shoots out on that scarring too, and that's another way you can get around it. Then I'll get something to come into here. Okay, I'm going to do it. I don't need that anymore.